Hello and welcome to today's video. So this is my worst / most disappointing books of the year. And we're just going to go through them. I'm just going to talk about them. I've got my little list here. There's 7 in total, 3 that I think were the worst and 4 that were just disappointing. So I'm just going to talk about them. I don't normally stand up for videos, I normally sit down, but the cats are asleep. This is the space I've got. You can still kind of see the bookcase behind me, but it's a mess anyway. So if I just sat down and just had to tidy it up, whereas if I stand here, it's just blocked. You can't really see anyway. So yeah, that is what I'm doing. We're just doing a little stand-up video. It's going to be super short and sweet. Most of these books I've got rid of, so I'm not going to bother finding them out and holding them up. I'll insert a little graphic here, so you'll be able to see the covers. I should say I'm going to be talking about these 7 books as my worst and most disappointing. I'm not talking about any books I DNF'd. I did make a separate video that'll be linked somewhere up there on books I actually DNF'd this year. But let's just get into them. I guess we can just do the worst first. So, is there an order to these? Yeah, I guess there is a bit of an order. Okay, so the absolute worst book that I read this year was The Spanish Love Deception. Can't believe how much I hated this book. Honestly, it was dreadful. I don't know why I finished it. I think I was just in one of those moods where I wasn't up for DNFing, so I finished it. I shouldn't have done. It was not good. I did not like our main character at all. She did not seem to have a good personality. She did not seem like a good person. So I had no interest in following her have this amazing life and fall in love. No, I didn't. I didn't care because I didn't like you. Within the first few pages you showed your character very well by how you treat people. And I don't know how that can just be glossed over, but it's glossed over the entire book, even by the love interest. Yeah, honestly, didn't really mind him. He wasn't anything special. He didn't really have much of a personality. But no major negatives, except for how they were written. He was so big and tall, and she was so small. And I don't really read romance books. I've heard people moan about this trope before and not really got it. I get it now. I get it. Yeah, not good. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I've waited, it's like the 18th of January as I'm recording this. I've waited long enough that I'm not mad about any of these anymore. So it's just going to be short, sweet, why I didn't like them, why they're on this list, done. The next worst is Will. This is a autobiography, memoir, whatever you want to call it, by Will Smith. Before reading this, I thought Will Smith was pretty decent and I liked him, didn't mind him. I now don't. So that can tell you that. I did read this during a reading vlog, which if I can find it, I'll link it up here. Oh boy, this, yeah. I don't think he's a good person. Let's base it as that. I don't think he treats the women in his life very well. And I just don't like how he talks about things. It wasn't good. It really ruined my entire idea and perception of him, and I thought it was pretty shit. It also seemed quite overwritten, and I'm really glad I read it through the audiobook, but also think if I didn't read it through the audiobook I might have just DNF'd it rather than keep going. There was entire sections where he sang. Yeah. Yeah, not great, didn't like it. I think I did give it a 3-star rating on Goodreads because I struggle to rate memoirs, biographies badly, because who the fuck am I to say someone's life isn't 5 stars? Because I'm sure that, well, I hope that everyone's life to themselves is 5 stars. Everyone should be living their own 5-star life. But yeah, this one wasn't a 5-star life for me, and I did not enjoy reading about it. So there is that. Then last but not least is a really small little book, which actually I will grab because there's no visual of it online. So this is the 3rd one in the worst section. This is the War Poets anthology. This is the only one in the worst section that I've still kept, and that is just because of how it is. I didn't enjoy it because the poetry wasn't for me. This is a collection of poems just written by random people during the war. There's a few in there that are by like really famous people, but a lot of them just aren't known. Yeah. This was very long-winded, very over the top. Reminded me of, you know, when you're in school and you get a really old poem about, you know, like around Remembrance Day, you might get like a really old poem in English class and you have to go through it and analyse it. And it's like, this is great, I'm glad this is written, but I don't like it. It's very boring and it's just showing its age. You know, I read current day poetry and it's engaging, it gets you there, it gives you emotions, it makes you feel things. As of yet, have not found those same emotions that come from older poetry. And you know, after the one English class in school, you'd be so done with it and so just like, oh, this is an entire collection of them. Yeah, it took me quite a while to read it. I'm glad I did. I am glad that I did. I do think it's important to remember history and remember what people were going through, and there were a couple in here that I was like, okay, I get it. I get why it was written. Do I get why it was published? No, but I get why it was written. So yeah, that just for me was not worth it. Was one of, well, it was literally one of the 3 worst books that I read this year. But I do think it's more personal reasons. If you enjoy older classic style poetry, it might not be the worst for someone else. Okay, and then there are the 4 books that are my most disappointing books of the year. How should I go through this? I guess let's just go through it in the order I wrote it down. There's not really a massive order here, they're just as I've wrote them down. They're all pretty disappointing on the same sort of level. So the first one was a book called Zoo City. The reason this is disappointing because I've owned this for probably 10 years maybe. I don't know, but I purchased it when I was a child, when I was like still living at home. I'm now 26, so I reckon I have owned it for 10 years. If not 10 years, then close to it. I've saved it. I've started it a few times, started reading it and just thought this isn't the right time, not for me now. Because it's one of the oldest books on my TBR, I decided to read it to get through it this year. I read it for the Z prompt in my alphabet challenge. It was just fine. Like, it was mediocre, it was fine. It wasn't a bad book, but it was just fine. It was urban fantasy, but we didn't really see the fantasy element and I didn't really enjoy it. So yeah, don't really have a lot to add about it. It was just disappointing. I'd saved it, I'd waited ages to read it. I thought it was going to be like a new favourite book. I thought it was going to be a massive thing and it was just fine. Then we have The Betrayals. This, once again, is one where it's marketed as fantasy, it's meant to be fantasy, and we do not see the fantasy element at all. So during this book there is this fantastical thing that people can do. It's where this entire like society, this entire like academic thing that we mainly see ourselves looking at is set up from. It's set up by people who are learning to do this fantastical thing. We don't see it once. They could have chose a random like super specific, you know, like this society, this super prestigious academic place that we are at is just for rocket scientists, is just for, I don't know, very complicated physicists, something like that. They could have picked a non-fantastical element and the story would have been the exact same. It was just disappointing, the way it was described, the way it was, you know, put forward. I thought we were getting this fantastical story and it wasn't that. And it was also disappointing in other ways, to be honest. I found it quite boring, and it didn't vibe. It did not vibe. Then we have The Little Prince. Now, the reason this one is so disappointing, I think I gave it like, you know, an average rating. I think I gave it like 3.5 maybe. Not 100% sure, but it wasn't bad is what I'm saying. But this had been hyped up so much. This is a book that was like, you can read it as a child, you can read it as an adult, it's this magical thing, it makes you think, you're going to want to read it over and over again. It just felt like reading, I don't know. I don't even know what it felt like reading, but it was short and sweet and simple and I read it in a couple of hours. It wasn't bad. It didn't make me think. There was nothing new in there. There was nothing I hadn't considered before. There was no massive things on life. There was no massive thing, read it as an adult that you wouldn't see as a child. There was nothing like that. I just think this one is one that where it's overhyped. And I don't know why it was hyped up, but during 2021, I heard so much about The Little Prince. It was being hyped up on like so many channels, so many bookish ways that like I consume content. I thought it was going to be amazing and it just wasn't. It was just okay. And then last but not least, and probably the most disappointing book honestly, is As Good as Dead. This is the 3rd book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series. I love book 1 and 2. Books 1 and 2 of this series were amazing. They were everything. And then I got to the 3rd book, I was so excited for it, and it took such a turn I wasn't expecting. Such a turn that honestly even now feels unrealistic to me. A turn that doesn't seem in line with the character that we met in books 1 and 2. A turn that honestly feels like a personality transplant and something went wrong. Something went wrong. This was meant to be a book for a different character, but did end up happening, so they just swapped the character names around. I don't know, but it just, yeah, it wasn't it for me. The entire time I was reading it, I was disappointed. I was like, no, like this isn't right. Something's going to change. She's going to realise this. Maybe it's just a mental breakdown and we're going to snap out of it. She's going to realise it. No, we didn't have anything like that. It really felt like a personality transplant. I didn't feel like I was still reading from the same character. I didn't feel like the decisions that were being made were decisions that the character we got to know would make. This analytical, this questioning, this very moral character. I don't feel like the decisions made in the third book were decisions the character would make. And yeah, okay, maybe I haven't left it long enough to talk about some of these, but you know, out of the 7, only one of them has still got me proper going. So yes, that was another disappointing one because of how much I love the first 2 books and because there was so much hope for the third. But yeah, another disappointing one. But yes, those were all the books. Those were the 7 books I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you enjoyed this. I think there are 2 more kind of like 2022 wrap up, end of the year type videos that are coming. I think one of them's the books that I DNF'd maybe, and one of them is series I finished maybe, something like that. But yeah, there's 2 more coming after this one, I think. So yeah, and then after that we'll be into the new year content. So yeah, hope you're still enjoying. Do give it a like if you liked it, subscribe down below if you'd like to see more content like this, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.